Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 6 articles in this episode for you, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one we have here is off of BizPack Review. Waiting for the hamster to get it up here on the page for us. There we go. George Ramos. Illegals use fake IDs because they are working for us. Univision anchor George Ramos believes many immigrants coming into the U.S. illegally should not be classified as criminals who need to be deported as they are a benefit to Americans. President Trump is criminalizing the immigrants in this country, Ramos told Fox News Channel's Chris Wallace on the O'Reilly Factor on Friday. And there is video of this if you want to pull it up and take a look at it. He goes on to say the vast majority of undocumented immigrants in this country are not criminals, terrorists, he added, in response to the president's repeated claim that many of those in the U.S. illegally are criminals. They are coming here to benefit our lives, he says. The Fusion anchor took exception to how the administration is defining criminal illegal immigrants who will be deported, explaining problem getting violent criminals out of the country as long as those who have no problem with the law are not part of the deportation. About those who come into the country, work that allows them to drive and get government benefits. Is that a crime? Wallace asked. It's not a violent crime, Ramos responded. It is a crime, but you know they are here because of us. They are coming here, again, not because they want to go to Disneyland or because they want to kill Americans. They're here to benefit our lives. He conceded that many undocumented immigrants do use fake identification and driver's licenses. Why? Because they are working for us, he said. The reason they are here, Chris, is because of us, so we have to be responsible for that. Ramos also disagreed with the White House statement that the U.S. relationship with Mexico is phenomenal, calling it instead the worst since the United States took part in the Battle of 1914. The next article that I have for you, Conservative Tribune, and it says, Obama's disastrous catch and release program left 1 million illegals here for Trump to deal with. Media and various immigrant have been utterly melting down in response to actions taken by President Donald Trump's administration in regard to enforcing the laws against illegal immigration, something he vowed campaign trail that he would do. He reported on sweeping memos released this week by the Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly that spelled out how the laws would be enforced and which segments of the illegal immigrant population for deportation. While hypothetically, the country illegally can be deported at any time for any reason, the administration has made it abundantly clear that its focus is on those who have been convicted of crimes and already been ordered deported, yet still remain in the country. Here illegally is subject to removal at any time. That is a constant with every country, not just ours. The White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said at today's briefing, but the priority that the president has laid forward who have committed a crime or pose threat to our Spicer laid out the size of the problem. To 1 million people who have already been educated and had their process through a formal due process system, he said. And so what now is we focus the resources and the efforts on those people going first and foremost. Washington Daily Examiner, the category of illegal immigrants at the top of the priority list, and having already exhausted all deportation appeals, is actually much bigger than the media or the prior administration under former President Barack Obama ever let on. Based on the written response, Customs Enforcement Acting Director Thomas Homan to questions from the Senate Judiciary Committee, there are at least 950,062 individuals who fell into that category as of May of 2016. Only about 11,000 of those convicted criminal have been taken into custody by ICE. On top of that, it's estimated that there is an additional 2 million more illegal immigrants with criminal records who have not yet exhausted their appeals or received a final order for deportation. The result of sanctuary cities and Obama's catch and release policy that quite literally tied the hands of ICE and Border Patrol agents, preventing them from doing their job. That policy has now been rescinded, and the various agencies tasked with combating illegal immigration unleashed. The next article that I have for you is off of New York Post, and it says how to turn flood, or how to try this again, how to turn off the Latin refugee flood at the source. President Trump has tapped into Americans' anxiety about illegal immigration by promising to build a wall on our 2,000-mile border with Mexico. However, the vast majority of illegal migrants pouring over our southwest border are from Central America. The administration's prescription was pledging billions of dollars in the new U.S. assistance, and Congress is considering this. But unless we insist that these nations make their economies more competitive and their institutions less corrupt, money after bad, and failing to stem the tide of immigration at its source. Years ago, the Bush administration officials spoke of Central American countries as robust economic partners with which we traded more alliance like India. Today, we speak of them as faltering economies that need to be propped up by foreign aid. El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras form Central America's northern triangle, ravaged by corruption and societies tormented by crime. Millions of poor inhabitants unable to survive in rural economies opportunity elsewhere. 60% of Guatemalans and Hondurans live in poverty. Many seek refuge from gang activity and violence fueled by international drug trafficking. Accounts for 2 of the 3 cities with the world's highest murder rate. Impunity for criminals remain a serious problem, compounded by widespread corruption and criminal justice system that are overwhelmed and underfunded. Still others were lured by President Barack Obama's 2012 decision to suspend deportation of childhood arrivals. The result was an influx of unaccompanied minors that overwhelmed U.S. authorities on our southwest border in 2014, creating chaos. Ironically, while Mexico's image has paid a price for this border crisis, for a dwindling number of illegal migrants, and since 2013, Mexican authorities have stopped 1,000 Central Americans making their way to the U.S. border. During his confirmation hearing, Secretary of State Tillerson stressed push factors in Central America, such as crime and poverty, that drive thousands to make the perilous journey to the United States. Without a doubt, the lack of economic opportunity takes its toll on the region's youth. According to the World Bank, 1 in 3 young people in Central America neither work nor study. Gangs prey on the hopeless youngsters, offering easy money or wielding threats to coerce teenagers to join their ranks. Addressing these problems with conventional aid programs is only a temporary solution. Unless governments are compelled to deal with the rampant public corruption, security forces and criminal justice systems will never resolve the problem. El Salvador is governed by a political party that made clandestine pacts with gang leaders to win elections on rival politicians and private sector groups. A principal leader of that party is Jose Luis Moreno, a man suspected of laundering funds for Colombian narco guerrillas. In Guatemala, former President Otto Perez Molina and his vice president left power after their administration was found to be deeply involved in a kickback scheme. Fresh evidence implicating police officials and even a Supreme Court justice shows the depth and breadth of corruption in that country. Rigorous congressional and executive branch oversight is key to discouraging the waste of aid dollars in these Central American countries. But no less important, Congress should impose strict conditions on U.S. assistance. governments should be required to ferret out corruption. U.S. investigators should support local prosecutors in exposing and punishing corruption. Equally critical is using U.S. aid to leverage reforms that make these economies more competitive and attractive to foreign investment. The rule of law and economic realities are not respected in these Central American countries. Investors will take their dollars elsewhere. The leftist party that governs El Salvador today has bloated the government payroll, driven up debt, and hampered the private economy. As a result, economic growth has been cut in half under the current ruling party. A good neighbor, but U.S. taxpayers should not be on the hook for the failures of foreign leaders more interested in holding on to power or using public office for personal gain. We do the people of Central America no favors by ignoring corruption and failed economic policies, and we are missing an opportunity to curb immigration by removing incentives for it. The article that I have for you is off of Newsmax.com, and it says, McMaster, radical Islamic terrorism not helpful when describing threat. Terrorists are un-Islamic, and labeled radical Islamic terrorism is not helpful when describing their activities, President Donald Trump's new national security advisor said this week, showing a marked difference from the language the president and many of his senior advisors often use. Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster made the comments during his first all-hands staff meeting on Thursday, reports the New York Times. Quoting people who attended the meeting, they also report the new advisor, who remains in the active military, wore his Army uniform during the talks. A repudiation of his new boss's lexicon and worldview. William McCants, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute and the author of The ISIS Apocalypse, told the Times. McMaster, like Obama, is someone who was in positions of leadership, and it should not play into the jihadist propaganda that this is a religious war. McMaster's comments, though, conflict not only with Trump but with his predecessor, Michael Flynn, who resigned last week while admitting he had misled several officials, including Vice President Michael Pence, about his communications with a Russian diplomat. McCants said McMaster's views will be welcomed among the agencies sending recommendations through the National Security Council, as they'll see him as an advocate to express dissenting opinions. However, he warned that the views won't be the final word in Trump's White House. Many of his top advisors also subscribe to the radical Islam theory. Colonel Peter Mansour, who served with McMaster's during the 2007 surge in Iraq, told Fox News before McMaster's meeting, the Colonel absolutely does not view Islam as the enemy. He also believes that McMaster's will present a degree of pushback against the theories being propounded in the White House, and that this is a clash of civilizations and needs to be treated as such. McMaster's has made his views on dealing with the Islamic militants clear. The Times, including with Trump, who named him to replace Flynn after his first choice, retired Navy Vice Admiral Robert Harwood, turned. The new advisor appears with his language to take the position of both former President Barack Obama and George W. Bush, who separated terrorism from radical Islam, arguing that Muslim allies helped to capture and kill terrorists. During his presidential campaign, Trump often took Obama to task for his more moderate views, lampooning him for not using the radical Islamic terrorism designation. On Friday, one day after McMaster's made his comments, Trump again made the same claims in a speech to the Conservative Political Action Committee, saying, "We are going to keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country." Superiors is nothing new for McMaster's, who is well known for his independent views. The key thing to know about McMaster, three-star general and deputy commander of the Army's Training and Doctrine Command, is that he has made a career of speaking truth to power, often instinctively, without the slightest talent for fawning to his superiors. Fred Kaplan wrote in an article, Trump just hired the Army's smartest officer, for Slate magazine. So there you have that information. The next one I have is off of Bare Naked Islam, and it says, wielding man deliberately plows his car into pedestrians in Heidelberg. Initial reports believe it was a deliberate attack by the driver, who was hunted down by police during a standoff in a street in front of terrified witnesses. Motive unknown. Media try to blame it on mental issues. One of the victims remains in serious condition in a hospital after the attack. And the Express says, Rain Nectar Zitug cited police as saying the suspect was a young German man. The newspaper said the suspect had stopped at a red traffic light, and when it turned green, put his foot down before hitting a group of people at high speed and smashing into a pillar. The Mirror says police said that the suspect was armed with a knife when he plowed his rental car into the pedestrians in front of a bakery at around 4 p.m. local time on Saturday. Witnesses pointed him out to police as he fled on foot, and he was shot during a brief standoff in front of a row of shops and flats and a hotel in the city center. Posted on Twitter showed the moment the knife-wielding suspect was shot by police. Police opened fire after he allegedly ignored orders to drop the weapon, Heidelberg 24 reported. Around half a dozen officers surrounded the man and pointed their handguns at him as they shouted commands. After a brief standoff, a single gunshot was heard, and officers then rushed towards the injured man on the pavement. Police said the suspect was seriously injured in the shooting. Police did not reveal the man's motives or background, but they say terror background was not suspected, and he is thought to have acted alone. Local media reports suggest the man was suffering from mental health issues. So there's that one. And the final one in this episode of 247newsmedia.com. Muslims try to force American Christians to submit to Sharia law. Barack Hussein Obama and his liberal minions are constantly saying that Muslim refugees are peaceful folks that cause no threats to the U.S. However, the fact is that Muslim migrants can never be satisfied until they have to submit to Sharia law. The disturbing video below shows a bunch of Muslims surrounding a Christian and attack him in public in Dearborn, Michigan. Been fully taken by Muslims in recent years because it has been overrun by refugees. And the video is there in the article if you want to that. And it finishes up here by saying, we can only hope Donald Trump follows through with his promise to do something about the Muslim refugee problem our country is facing. You have that. If you like what I'm doing here, don't be afraid to tell me. Give it a thumbs up so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. That way you'll stay informed.